There is a moment in every economic collapse that nobody warns you about. Not the moment the stock market crashes. Not the moment the bank freezes your account. Not the moment the currency becomes worthless paper. The moment that actually destroys people is quieter than all of those. It is the moment a person realizes that everything they spent their life building, the degree, the credential, the professional identity, the institutional position, has no exchange value in the world that just replaced the one they prepared for. Leipzig, Germany, November 1923. Two neighbors. One is a concert pianist. 15 years of training. Performances at the grandest venues in Europe. Recordings sold across the continent. The other is a plumber who learned his trade at 16 from an uncle who never finished school. That November, as the mark collapsed from 75 per dollar to 4 trillion per dollar in less than 3 years, the pianist was begging for bread. The plumber was eating 3 meals a day. Most people hear that story and think it is about blue-collar versus white-collar work. It is not. It is about something far more precise and far more uncomfortable. Every single collapse in recorded history has applied the same sorting mechanism. Doctors driving taxis. Engineers washing cars. PhDs trading cigarettes for potatoes. The credential hierarchy that prosperity builds inverts completely the moment the institutions maintaining it stop functioning. And what rises to the top of that inverted hierarchy has been the same across every culture, every century, every monetary regime that has ever failed. But the skills that actually survived are not the ones most people would list. One of them is not even a trade. And understanding exactly why they survived will permanently change how you think about the value you carry. The first category is the repair economy. And to understand why it dominates every collapse scenario, you need to picture a mechanic's garage in Buenos Aires in December 2001. Argentina has just defaulted on $93 billion in sovereign debt, the largest default in history at the time. Banks are frozen. Cash machines are empty. The peso is about to lose 60% of its value overnight. Middle-class families are in the streets. The mechanic doesn't stop working. Before the crisis, he charged 50 pesos per hour. After the devaluation, he charged 50 pesos per hour. The nominal number was identical. But in dollar terms, his services had become dramatically cheaper and demand exploded. Argentines who had been trading their cars for new models every 3 years suddenly needed those same cars to last another decade. The mechanic who could make a 1995 Renault run another 100,000 kilometers was no longer a commodity. He was essential infrastructure. This is the first law of collapse economics, and it is ironclad. When people can no longer afford to replace things, the person who can repair them becomes a critical node in the survival economy. The data confirms this with uncomfortable precision. The Argentine automotive repair sector processed an estimated 30% more vehicles in 2002 than in 2000, despite total economic carnage. Formal employment in finance, retail, and professional services collapsed. Skilled trades held. In many cases, real wages in the informal economy actually increased because supply of skilled workers contracted faster than demand for their work. The same forensic signature appears in Weimar Germany. As the mark fell from 75 per dollar to 4 trillion per dollar, institutional employment, clerks, accountants, bureaucrats, became economically worthless faster than the currency itself. But the skilled tradespeople who maintained the physical infrastructure of daily life operated in a parallel barter economy that hyperinflation couldn't fully reach. A plumber in Berlin in 1923 wasn't paid in marks. He was paid in coal, bread, sausage, firewood. His skills bypassed the dying monetary system entirely and plugged directly into the real economy of survival goods. Cuba's special period in 1993 showed the same pattern in a different context. The Soviet Union had collapsed 2 years earlier. Cuba lost 80% of its oil imports and 85% of its trade overnight. GDP contracted 34%. The formal economy froze. But mechanics and repair workers operating in the informal economy found themselves in extraordinary demand because the government couldn't import new equipment and old Soviet machinery needed to keep running. A Cuban mechanic who could fabricate replacement parts from scrap metal became more valuable to the state than a university-trained economist. The credential had collapsed with the institution. The skill had not. Here is why this matters beyond the historical examples. Repair skills are anti-fragile. Most skills lose value during economic contraction. They are correlated with prosperity. But repair skills invert. The worse conditions become, the more broken things accumulate, and the more desperately people need someone who can fix them. You are not riding the economic cycle. You are countercycling it. In financial terms, the repair skill is a long position on economic dysfunction. And dysfunction is always available. The second category is the one that never appears in economics textbooks. Buenos Aires, October 2011. On the corner of Florida Street, men stand on the sidewalk whispering one word to passing pedestrians. Cambio. Exchange. They are called arbolitos, little trees, because they stand still and wait like trees for customers to come to them. They buy US dollars at the black market rate and sell at a premium. The spread between the official rate and the black market rate sometimes exceeded 60%. These men had no formal qualifications. What they had was something far more dangerous. The ability to read price differentials between two parallel monetary systems in real time and arbitrage the gap. Every economic collapse creates a dual monetary reality. The official system, dying, state-enforced, visible. And the real system, informal, adaptive, parallel. The gap between them is where fortunes are made and lost. And the person who can fluently operate in both, who understands the exchange rate between the collapsing currency and whatever real store of value has replaced it, holds a form of power that no hyperinflation can destroy. This is the monetary translation skill. And the historical record on it is staggering. Weimar Germany produced its most famous beneficiaries through exactly this mechanism. The earliest and most consistent winners were not foreigners buying German assets cheaply. They were German currency brokers operating in the gray market. Individuals who understood the exchange mechanics between the dying mark and the foreign currencies, replacing it as real stores of value. They facilitated transactions between ordinary Germans desperate to convert disintegrating savings and the emerging parallel currency economy. The Reichsbank couldn't stop them because stopping them would have meant stopping commerce entirely. Lebanon between 2019 and 2023 showed the same dynamic with modern precision. The Lebanese pound collapsed from 1,500 to the dollar to 89,000 to the dollar. The entire banking system froze. An entire middle class was financially annihilated. But throughout that collapse, informal currency exchange brokers deeply embedded in Lebanese commercial culture continued functioning. They were the capillaries of the economy when the arteries had hardened. The people who understood how to facilitate exchange between the dying pound and the dollar economy didn't just survive. They became indispensable. Venezuela confirmed the pattern again. The Bolivar collapse created an entire informal economy of forex operators, individuals who could facilitate transactions between the official rate, the black market dollar rate, and the USDT stablecoin transactions that became increasingly common as the crisis deepened. By 2021, approximately 65% of all transactions in Venezuela were being conducted in foreign currency. The informal operators who enabled that shift were not speculators. They were the people who kept the economy breathing. Here is the deeper mechanism. When a currency collapses, what is actually happening is that the official price signal, the system through which an economy communicates value, is being destroyed. Prices expressed in the dying currency become noise, not signal. But humans still need to coordinate economic activity. What they desperately need is someone who can translate between the dying signal and the emerging one. That translation function is the most valuable skill in the collapse economy. The third category is the knowledge that cannot be inflated away. Moscow suburbs, summer 1992. The Soviet Union has been dead for 8 months. Inflation is running at 2,600% annually. Pensions are vaporizing. And yet 71% of Russian households have a dacha, a small plot of land outside the city, and they know how to use it. By 1992, dachas were producing 92% of Russia's potato crop, 77% of its vegetables, 87% of its berries and fruit. Russia did not experience a famine after the Soviet collapse. The reason is almost entirely attributable to the preservation of household food production knowledge across generations of Soviet citizens. But here is the distinction that history makes clear and most people miss entirely. It wasn't the ownership of land that protected Russian families in 1992. It was the knowledge of food production and preservation. Academic economists and urban professionals who acquired dachas as status symbols but had never learned to actually farm were no better protected than their urban neighbors. The soil was there. The seeds were available. But the knowledge of when to plant, how to manage pests without chemical inputs, how to preserve vegetables through a Russian winter, that was the survival variable. The knowledge was the asset. The land was merely the tool the knowledge required. The same forensic signature appeared in Argentina in 2001. When the formal economy imploded, a national barter network emerged that at its peak involved 6 million Argentines trading goods and services using locally printed credits. Participants who brought production skills, food preservation, sewing, repair, herbal medicine, extracted more value from the network than those who brought credentials. A woman who could teach others to make and preserve food commanded exchange value that no professional credential could match. The knowledge was the currency. The fourth category ties all the others together. Every skill that survived every economic collapse in history shares one structural property. It functions independent of institutional systems. The repair trade needs no bureaucracy. The monetary translator needs no clearinghouse. The food producer needs no supply chain. Each skill addresses a fundamental human need directly, without institutional intermediation. And in a collapse, it is precisely the institutional intermediation that fails first. Your credential is the opposite of this. It is entirely dependent on the system that conferred it. A law degree requires functioning courts. A medical credential requires a functioning hospital system. An accounting qualification requires functioning businesses with books to balance. When the institutions fail, the credential-dependent professional discovers they are not holding a skill. They are holding a dependency.